Hello world, we're back. Breakout Finder, wherever you're watching or maybe listening. This is also a podcast, so do us a favor if you like what we're producing, rate it, leave a response. I don't care if it's 0 stars. We'd prefer 5 stars. All the reviews you can give us. As you can see by the overlay, this is a Game of Thrones edition. And if you've been reading our tweets online, Ryan and I are on complete opposite sides of this season. And we're going to get into some of that. But we want to start talking about Game of Thrones because we're almost to the final episode. It's the next episode. We just watched, episode 5?
The Bells,
episode 5. I'll let you have a take first, and then I'm going to come in and just flame everything.
You're gonna go Drogon over King's Landing, dude. Again, as you alluded to, man, I've enjoyed myself from the start of the season to where we are now. Totally respect the gripes and some of the nitpicking and the complaints. Obviously, the writing isn't where a lot of us have come to expect and come to know and love. Dave and Dan have thoroughly checked out. They're on to Star Wars. They obviously set the timeline for the season, and it feels rushed. And I get all that, but I'm still such a fan, man. And I do wish things were different and things have played out differently. But I mean, like last episode alone, man, all season long, from costumes to music, especially the visuals, man, the acting especially, where the writing has fallen short, actors like Emilia Clarke and Dinklage, man. I mean, just some of my favorite performances from them throughout the entire series. Sapochnik didn't get it done to some people's critique with the Battle of Winterfell. It was super dark, but he came back last week, man, and just the visuals for the King's Landing bloodbath, man, were just some of the best that I've ever seen in the series. So it's had its highs and it's had its lows, and for some people those lows have been kind of consistent and throughout the season, and that's unfortunate for them, man. I really feel bad. So I know you aren't as friendly with the criticisms as I am, man. So take those beautiful glasses and that beautiful hair of yours, man, and go for it.
Okay, well, first
stage
off,
is yours.
Okay, have you ever listened to a podcast on like 1.5 times the normal speed? That's what it feels like when we're watching this episode. When I watch these things, I feel like everything is just so rushed, jam-packed. Yeah, shout-outs to the guys that are stuffing their face with fast food and cranking out the CGI day and night, because that's really what's saving this show.
Top notch.
Dude, the writing is dead. I mean, it's like things are happening so fast. Here's the thing. Are we even going to see Bronn again? Like, honestly, did they just bring him back to do one more bullshit banter with Tyrion and Jaime and fire off?
The scene was really weird. It was a weird scene.
What was he doing? How did he even sneak in there?
He snuck in there, bro. He's Bronn, man. He just right through the back door, man. Don't even worry about the crossbow. The guards didn't care about the crossbow. Snuck right in and right to business.
There's 15 people in King's Landing, and nobody noticed the guy with a 7-foot wide crossbow who had to turn it sideways to get it in the door. I don't understand the scene at all. But
it was weird.
Okay, so, and then like tactically, I just don't understand, like, they lose a dragon the last episode, then she comes back this episode, and suddenly she remembered how to fly, and she's bobbing and weaving and just torching everything. I mean, what happened? Why didn't this happen the episode before?
She didn't have the Harrenhal dive bomb technique, bro. She used the sun. She used the elements, man. Dany is she got a chance to sleep on it, buddy. She got a chance to sleep on it. She came real high, and your boy Euron didn't stand a chance, man.
Okay, here's my thing about this. This is Game of Thrones was like, oh shit, we gave her too big of an army. We got to hack it down. Obviously, she's going to win. They had to walk it back. She had too much. You can't give her 2 dragons. She burned the whole city down with 1 dragon. You give her two dragons?
Two would have been something bad.
That episode would have been half as long with two dragons. I kind of wish
it would have been
25
dragons. Minutes. Yeah, it would have been 25 minutes.
Yeah, they would have torched the city faster. We all could have went to bed and put that episode behind us. So, okay. So, we're not going to see Braun again. We got one episode left. They gotta go to Bran. They got to go to Sansa. We got to go back to Arya. What the hell? Where did a white horse come from?
Bro, so
saddleless
that
white
was
horse.
Yeah, that was one of the 2 or 3 initial kind of, obviously we can talk about Cersei's death, Cersei and Jaime in a minute here, but the horse walking in. I am not a book reader, so I have very strong opinions about the show, but I am not a book reader. I do plan on maybe going back this winter and cuddling up by the fire, man, and reading the books, but I'm not a book reader. But I do know that the Pale Mare obviously has some religious references, and I believe there's some kind of references in the book as well. God, it kind of hints at death. So again, Arya maybe riding out from King's Landing to go back to Winterfell to kind of, put the kibosh on Dany, man, after she witnessed what she was doing. But I will say, a very convenient horse to kind of just show up amongst all the rubble. I did also read after the show that it was dude Harry Strickland, who was the commander of the Gold Company. Dude, could we talk about him for a second? Speaking of characters that did nothing, dude, Harry Strickland, the Gold Company, bro, they showed up, got into formation, and dude, they were donezo in a matter of seconds. So to shouts to them for I guess getting hyped up a little bit. They came on the boat, episode 1 or 2, whatever it was, and you were like, oh, these are the best sell swords ever. Cersei paid a lot of coin for these guys and for nothing. But they said that was actually Strickland's horse that kind of rode back in there and helped Dany come out, ride out. But I'm with you there, bro. Again, at the time it felt kind of random, but I think there's probably some more to it that I'm hoping we'll find out next episode.
Look, this show's going away from everything that's good. First off, I can only hope that Arya's dead already, so we don't waste another 5 minutes talking about whatever her side of the story is. She can't kill the Night King and Dany, so don't even talk about Arya anymore. Let her hug Sansa and then die from CTE. And then let's move on, because there's a lot of stuff we gotta get to in this show.
There's a lot of stuff. A lot of loose ends.
We don't have time. Where's Samwell Tarly? Is he just gone? Not gonna see him again. Not
pregnant,
gonna see.
Bro. This girl's pregnant, man. They're out being a family.
We didn't know we were gonna lose these people. Ghost gone.
Oh man, don't even get me started about Ghost.
All
Ghost
of them are gone.
Gone
And then just watching these episodes, seriously, dude, she's got some balls. She's just staring out that window as the dragon's torching everything. She stared out that window for how many episodes?
Bro, she got paid $1 million an episode this season to just do that. So salute, man. That's how you get their money.
I just don't even know what to say watching that episode. It felt predictable. The only thing that they can possibly do at this point that'll make me feel good is if Arya does a face swap. Can we do one, faceless man, the girl is nobody, and she pulls it off and kills somebody or does something? Can we do something?
Yo, so there was might have been season 5 or season 4 or 5, around there, maybe season 6. But George Martin went on record with either one or both of the showrunners saying that in this series, in the television series, there have been three big shocking moments. One was when they burnt Shireen. 2 was the whole Hodor hold the door scene. And 3, again, one of Dan or Dave said that 3 is coming in the series finale, which is obviously this coming Sunday. So
wait a minute. Wait. Shireen getting burned?
Bro,
what about when Theon Greyjoy got his hog chopped off? That doesn't make the list?
It was shocking. It was shocking as well. Dude, I'm with you here. The Shireen scene, the Shireen storyline for me, again, maybe when I go back and watch it again, like it'll kind of click a little bit more. But then as it was playing out, never once was I like, oh, this is a truly shocking moment. There would have been a couple other ones that I would have nominated there.
Man,
I say all that to ask you.
Oh God.
Again, I know you're out.
Blood pressure's up.
What would you consider? What do you think is going to be that third shocking moment?
Third shocking. I mean, like at this point, I'm just trying to think of what would shock me. If Arya dies, she's survived death like 40 times now. I've never seen somebody dive around more corners and survive than Jon Snow was like the league leader in him after episode 3 because he did it like 5 times, and then Arya did it like 49 times in the last episode.
She was David Montgomery out there, man, breaking tackles and hiding around rocks and stuff like that.
I guess the only thing left for me would be like, I would love to see the match. Here's the sneaky things that to me are left. Arya doing the face swap thing. That's obvious. I wish she would have done it to kill the Night King, but they did.
Now, is that sneaky if she kills someone like Sansa or something like that, or something like crazy out of left field? Like
how? I mean, at this point, the way the
I don't
writing's
know how
going,
that would click, but
maybe she would. I mean, I guess to me, I would like to see Bronn come back and use the crossbow on Dany when she's like maybe flying down to kill Jon Snow. She's about to torch him, and then all of a sudden a crossbow hits her, through the chest or something, and she looks down to her wound, and there's Bronn.
Shocking.
And then Tyrion's like, oh, you can have Highgarden, and blah, blah. There's nothing left of anything. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm thoroughly let down. I'm disappointed. Again, shout outs to the guys that are just cranking out the CGI at the computers just day and night, 24 hours a day.
Put the series on the back, put the season on the back, yeah.
Those guys are killing it, man. But this is supposed to be a Game of Thrones centric episode. We're gonna mix in draft into this, man. And I want to start with some comps, some Game of Thrones character comps.
Let's go,
man.
Let's
and
go.
Naturally, the first one we got to start with Dany. And so here's a question for you. Who is bound to completely blow up and flame their ADP and just exceed expectations? Who is that for you?
So the name that I had been kind of kicking around here is new Jacksonville Jaguars running back Rykel Armstead. For those who have been listening to me type nonsense on Twitter for a little bit now, past couple seasons, they know that I've never been a big Leonard Fournette fan. The hype surrounding him, and this is we can take a whole episode and talk about Fournette and how he was coming out and stuff like that. But the hype was something else, man. He was getting legit Bo Jackson, Adrian Peterson, like Frankenstein player comparisons. Anyways, I've never liked Leonard Fournette. He's had the volume handed to him. He's been their bell cow back, but he's been inefficient and largely ineffective in stretches. And now we know there's been kind of some off-field type rumblings, either button heads with the front office, the coaching staff, whatever it may be. So my assumption and my nod for Armstead is that Fournette either continues to kind of underwhelm on the field, and or in addition to kind of continuing to ruffle some feathers and maybe the ice isn't very strong, man, and he's kind of walking that really thin line. So with Armstead, they selected him in the 5th round, so the draft capital wasn't necessarily notable. But with Armstead, according to Player Profiler, man, they dropped a Lamar Miller comparison, which is very, very interesting to me. 72 percentile college dominator rating, 5'11", 220, so looks the part. We kind of like those backs that are 215, 220, 68th percentile SPARQ score as well. So again, he can definitely boogie for kind of being a back of that size. His senior season at Temple, man, over 1,000 yards, 13 scores. Didn't really get it done through the air, so kind of Leonard Fournette-esque in that regard. The biggest thing with Armstead and the Jacksonville spot for me, man, is that, outside of Fournette, there's guys like Alfred Blue, Tom Rawls, Benny Cunningham. These guys throughout their career have either been, injury prone or just guys. They're not names that are necessarily going to pose a really big threat to Armstead, perhaps making an early push. So he's someone that, we could, I guess, handcuff early with the expectation that, the lane to some serious volume might actually end up opening up sooner rather than later.
I mean, that's also, we lost TJ Yeldon, right? So a veteran has moved out of this backfield, And, man, Leonard Fournette has not stayed healthy. So I like that one, man. That's a guy that's probably going to get an opportunity because the lead runner in this offense has been consistently injured. I mean, look at last year. Once again, we've seen it for Leonard Fournette. 2 years in the league, multiple injuries, multiple games missed, inefficient as a runner. Now they finally got a competent quarterback. That could change things a little bit, but I'm still not a Leonard Fournette truther, and obviously you aren't either. My comp for somebody that I think is going to exceed their ADP, and this is kind of a dynasty thing, is JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Arcega-Whiteside right now is kind of getting a little bit of pause from people because he's looked at like he's buried on the depth chart, right? There's some guys on this roster. We've heard names of players potentially being traded on this roster. I don't know. I look at the draft capital that was put into Arcega-Whiteside, second-round pick. He had athleticism that I think not a lot of people expected to see, but I was fine with him running a 4.54 at 225 pounds, 6'2", coming out of Stanford. This is one of those guys that I think is, in his comp on Player Profilers, Kenny Golladay, it's a good comp. This is a guy with a high breakout age, and he was a big part of this offense at Stanford. If you look at his red zone targets, this was a guy that was primarily a red zone weapon, and I think that's where he's going to get his big break in this offense the soonest. Last year in school, 17 targets in the red zone, 13 receptions, 9 red zone touchdowns, 10 receptions inside the 10. So this is a guy that proved that in college he can be a big body target. He can finish in the end zone, and that's something that I think the Eagles are definitely going to covet. All right, man, let's go to someone else. How about Tyrion, man? Tyrion, man, whose career in the NFL is going to be the shortest?
Oh man, I hope we don't get like some dwarf. I mean, we're not trying to stir up some controversy here.
What are you talking about?
This is all fun and games.
No, that's not what this is. Tyrion should have been fired a long time ago. He's been doing a horrible job for a long time. Look, just because he's not tall and the word short is in there, that is not the same thing. I mean, it's just not the same thing. Go on.
You're right. So this one kind of breaks my heart a little bit here because I'm a fan of the player, a fan of the person, just not a fan of kind of where maybe I see the career going. So I jotted down Bryce Love. The ACL terrifies me, man. The knee injury terrifies me. And again, you can probably punch in any one of X amount of players here that are coming off injury, whatever like that. Again, it's real easy for us to sit here and talk about injuries and recovery because we just don't have access to that kind of data. So this is pure speculation, of course. But for a player that is a bit undersized, 5'9", 200, that has relied on his speed, his agility, his ability to cut. A knee injury, it goes without saying, is obviously a concern. It's detrimental to an extent. He posted I think it was a pre-draft video, a pre-combine video of him kind of working out, kind of showing the progress that he's made. He looks super stiff to me, man. It looked, didn't, obviously he's still recovering. So I know I get that's kind of the point, but it just looked like he was still in that recovery process, and it didn't look like, I know they were touting him as kind of being further along than maybe she should be. It didn't look like that at all to me. So I'm just concerned about kind of the long-term, health and kind of the long-term, like what are you truly going to get out of a player like this? He was selected 112 overall, so just outside the top 100. So Washington must have, got enough feedback medically to kind of feel comfortable about where he was. I mean, again, this is just me just being, with a little bit of, apprehension and concern here. And he's kind of an easy one to kind of pick on. But man, if he is healthy, that 2017 season that he had at Stanford, man, was some of the most fun I've had watching a player, any player in recent memory, man. Over 2,100 yards, 19 scores, averaged 8.1 yards a touch, man. Just the definition of a home run threat. I know there were some questions kind of about his ability as a receiver, at least his usage as a receiver, but on the ground, man, there was no one, quite as exciting as Bryce Love at the time. So if he does get right, could be looking at quite a nice little, value type selection. But man, I'm super cautiously, I'm not even cautiously optimistic, man. I'm straight up pessimistic about the knee. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's also undersized, 5'9", 200 pounds. Fourth round pick, surprisingly, especially coming off that ACL tear. Yeah. So if this guy didn't tear his ACL, we might be looking at a late second, might be looking at a mid-third, early third pick. So that says something about Washington. It says that they love guys that tear ACLs. And then what was really weird was when you look at his 2018, what a weird year. I remember so much hype on him coming into 2018 because of that 17 season. And then he started out the year weird, against San Diego State, had a really bad game. And then he killed Southern Cal, but then all these odd games, 4 yards per carry, a yard per carry, 3 yards per carry. These were on like 18 and 20 carries, and it was just very opposite of what we were expecting from Bryce Love. And then there's the ACL tear, which really changed everything. But yeah, that's a player that I like, but I'm with you, man. I would not be surprised if his career is short. And speaking of short, man, I'm going to keep this one short because there's really nothing I need to say. Mine is Riley Ridley. Riley Ridley checked almost no boxes. And he didn't even really check the draft capital box because I'm in the first, second, and third round draft selections have the higher hit rate. Fourth round and beyond is where it starts to dip. Riley Ridley, not an early selection. A lot of people thought that Riley Ridley was going to go much earlier than he did. Even after he did his combine and absolutely disappeared, went full ghost. I mean, if you go on Player Profiler, what I love about Player Profiler is when you type in a guy's name, you can watch all the stats like slide up. But when you type in Riley Ridley's name, they just stay at the bottom. It's a very weird phenomenon to see. Dude, he's got a 20th percentile SPARQ score, no breakout age, no dominator age. His yards per reception are low. Yeah, he played with some other guys. This is just a guy that I feel like scouts really got behind because of the film, which I'm telling you, and we've talked about it before, there is so much subjective nature to watching film. And there's guys that are really good at it, and it does matter because we watch guys like Stephon Diggs, Antonio Brown in the pros, and you watch how nuanced they are and what they do well. But that's against the best guys in the world. So when you see them do that to them, you're like, okay, he's dusting professionals. When you see Riley Ridley do it to a guy that's not of that talent level, now all of a sudden you have to go, okay, what would he look like versus these guys we're seeing Diggs do it against and Brown do it against? So it's this projection. I'm just not a fan of Ridley. He went to the Bears. The Bears already had Anthony Miller. They've got Cohen. They've got Allen Robinson. They've got a young quarterback. This is an offense that I just don't know where Riley really fits in here outside of depth because he's not athletic. He didn't produce in college. He's not that young. I'm not a fan. I think his career is going to be short, man. He's out. I don't love him. He's gone. He's dead to me. He's dead to me. And why isn't Tyrion dead yet? All right, man. Here's from a short reference to a big reference. Let's talk about Brienne. Brienne of Tarth, Sir Brienne. Yeah.
Night, bro. Night now.
Who is? Yeah, that's right, man. Only a knight can night a night, or maybe somebody else can too. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Who's gonna break your heart, man? The Brienne. Who's gonna have you standing outside wearing that robe? It's 2 a.m.
Looking
guy with one hand getting on a horse.
Yeah, looking for your lover, man, as they ride off, man. I talked about Bryce Love breaking my heart for other reasons before. And Paris Campbell is the name that I wrote down here, which also breaks my heart, man, because I love Paris Campbell, and I'm talking to you, man, as someone who loved Paris Campbell more than most coming out. So I mean, with Campbell, he finds himself comfortably inside my top 10 dynasty rookie rankings. I love the landing spot. Draft capital was there for him. 27th selection in the second round. And again, we don't have to really, review it in detail too much. We know he's a stellar athlete. We know there was questions about his usage at at Ohio State. He had the production, but a lot of people were questioning, can he go deep? Can he run a certain number of routes? Is he limited in his route tree? Again, I know where you stand on that. I'm certainly on that side as well. I don't think there's really any limitations to his game. I think he's just kind of scratching the surface. That said, he's here for me because again, I have him very high. I do have high hopes. I have high expectations for him. I look at a Colts roster. He's obviously locked in with Andrew Luck. He could be playing with Andrew Luck for the rest of his career or something like that. Or they just tacked on Devin Funchess. We know they have T.Y. Hilton there. We know Eric Ebron was a really big part of that offense last year. We still have Marlon Mack to kind of contend with. Is this the year that Marlon Mack really kind of gets going? So I guess my big concern is that Paris Campbell, despite the draft capital, despite the talent, despite the obvious athleticism, maybe doesn't kind of get his footing initially,
come on!
maybe falls behind, and next thing you know, he's kind of an afterthought. He's kind of like a what if or woulda coulda shoulda. Again, I don't think that's how it plays out, but if I had to, write a name down here for someone that again, like you said, I'm gonna be out there, crying sad ugly face over, man. It's gonna be your guy, my guy, Paris Campbell.
Why couldn't you just say Riley Ridley and move on?
Check
Riley Ridley for all these boxes. God, I love Paris Campbell, and I've dropped this quote a bunch of times, and all these guys are gonna disagree with me, and my mentions get blown up about it all the time. So I'm gonna say it again because I gotta reiterate it for the people in the back row. Here's the issue for me. Just because someone wasn't asked to do it doesn't mean they can't do it. We've seen Paris Campbell do it. There's quotes from the scouts on the Colts that they saw things in him that they believed they could stretch and enhance, and he had all the tools. I love Paris Campbell. I can understand your trepidation. I disagree with it wholeheartedly. I hate that you said it. Here's who's gonna break my heart. I don't necessarily love him. I was against this guy quite a bit, pretty much all offseason. David Montgomery. Look, he went to a good spot, and he has the draft capital, right? David Montgomery went in the third round. This was a guy that there was a lot of people that were a fan of David Montgomery coming into this draft class. Not a stellar athlete for starters, 15th percentile SPARQ score. So let's just get that out there right now. We're going to go ahead and cut the grass right now and just be able to look right through it. I'm not a big fan of David Montgomery, but here's the problem. He went to a great situation. Arguably, he's the third best back in this class in dynasty terms. So if we're drafting today, we want Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and for me, it's Darrell Henderson, number 4. That's how I'm ordering them. Now, Darrell Henderson, we're going to get into him later. Obviously, I would have him above Montgomery had he not been stuck on the roster that he's on. Same round, but when we're talking about David Montgomery, here's the problem for me. I think inevitably he's going to let me down. This is a player that they talked about all offseason. Oh, his O-line was no good. He constantly had 1 yard of blocking in front of him. He had to earn every yard he got. I mean, he's got a pass catching prowess. He can run. We've seen it. I just don't think he's as electric. I mean, obviously, because he doesn't have the athleticism, but I don't think he's as good as people say he is just because we're watching that film. In all seriousness, I think that Mike Davis is a better runner. Today, I think Mike Davis is a better runner. And he's unfortunately stuck in an offense with Mike Davis, who's shown time and time again that when he gets an opportunity, he's got that juice, he's got that pop. Mike Davis is a tough guy to take off the field, and he's got a 3-down skill set. So I'm not sure that David Montgomery necessarily ends up as a full-time guy, but it just scares me with Cohen, the role he plays, the offensive weapons that are on this roster, and then Mike Davis, a guy that I really do like. I'm just not sure that David Montgomery is going to have this expansive role in a team that we've already seen who's willing to gadget players and mix the ball around and has a lot of targets and a young quarterback. I'm just not sure that David Montgomery is going to get it done. But that's just my take on it. I love Paris Campbell. Not a big fan of Montgomery, but he deserves to be drafted as the third back off the board. Okay. Holy smokes, I got a headache. Listen, Arya Stark, man. Who is sneaky good? Who's sneaky good Ari hasn't been very sneaky lately. She's been hit by a lot of mortar and a lot of fire.
CTE could be very real, as you said.
It's very real. We need to get a doctor out there, but there's none left. So go on.
There's none left. So, I know you kind of talked about how subjective, film watching is and just straight tape grinding. I know our very good friend Matt Kelly will straight ride against all the tape grinders, right? So the name that I jotted down here is probably a film grinder's favorite, and I like the situation. So I wrote down Deontay Johnson, who was selected. To play with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, man, have a pretty interesting draft history when it comes to selecting wide receivers. They do a pretty good job of scouting them. So if the Steelers kind of hone in on somebody, and they go, relatively, this is, we're talking about third round here for Deontay Johnson. So some notable draft capital. I kind of perk up in my chair a little bit, and I kind of either go back or kind of, flip the notepad open, figure out what I had written down. So I enjoyed watching Johnson. He was kind of a late riser in the process for me. Someone that I ended up watching when everyone else was kind of buzzing about him. And just really kind of effortless out there as far as his footwork and ability to get open. The thing with Johnson, he is a true kind of film watcher special in the sense that metric wise, I'm over here at playerprofiler.com, and metric wise doesn't really do a whole lot. He had decent college yards per reception, 73rd percentile, decent college dominators, 63rd percentile. So he has some things working for him. Athletically, man, 22nd percentile Spark Hex score, which is no bueno. Breakout age isn't there either, 42nd percentile. So there are some question marks on his profile. That said, again, I do like the landing spot. He is a bit buried at the moment. Obviously, we know James Washington's going to get his shot. We know they have Juju stepping up to fill that wide receiver one spot now that Antonio Brown has moved on. But I can see Johnson kind of mixing it up, even with the likes of someone like Dante Moncrief. And kind of pushing for that early kind of wide receiver 3-4 type workload. And depending what happens with James Washington's development, man, we could be looking at Johnson as somebody that ends up kind of sliding in, opposite Juju kind of earlier. Again, I think talent is there despite the question marks with his athleticism. What he kind of lacks in that regard, he makes up in his ability as a route runner, ability to kind of work off the line. He's a little more refined, a little more of a technician. That's kind of the feeling that I came away with after watching him. So really, I do love the landing spot despite Big Ben probably going to be exiting stage right, in a few years. So there are going to be questions about who's under center and what kind of happens in a post Ben Roethlisberger world in Pittsburgh. But I do trust the Pittsburgh front office when it comes to drafting and developing receivers.
It's crazy, right? Pittsburgh gets the benefit of the doubt, and when New England drafts a wide receiver outside of N'Keal Harry, I just did a cross across my chest. When outside of N'Keal Harry, it's like, man, they suck at this. They just can't nail it. Just wait till the guy goes undrafted and pick that guy. But yeah, when we talk about Johnson, man, this is a guy that was in the top 10 in red zone targets in this class. 18 targets, 10 receptions. So a surprising thing from a guy of his size, 5'10", 183. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of volume in Pittsburgh. This is a team that has been, known to throw the ball around a ton. Last year, attempts, number 1 in the league. So that's a big deal. And yeah, you've got the departure of Antonio Brown, which is going to open up a ton of targets. I'm just... I was a big fan of James Washington. I don't know if this says more about James Washington or more about Johnson, really. When you look at this, they put a lot of draft capital into James Washington. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was drafted highly, and this was a guy that was an elite producer in college. So, I get why you like Johnson. Sneaky good. I'll be interested to see what he does in the pros, but he certainly went to the right offense if you're a wide receiver who's willing to work. Speaking of wide receivers who are willing to work, didn't work at the combine, but he landed on a depth chart that I've been told recently on Twitter that I'm an idiot for saying this, but I said he landed on a depth chart that's kind of thin. Kelvin Harmon goes to the Washington Redskins. I mean, thank God he got drafted. Thank God. I was sitting out on my porch, sipping some tea, just pondering life.
Just lonely.
Lonely. Just watching.
Just quiet for you.
Apples fall off the tree. That's what we do when we pass the time out here in the Pacific Northwest. I don't understand how he went as late as he did. How did Riley Ridley go before Kelvin Harmon? What's up with that?
The world may never know.
It doesn't matter. It's absolutely asinine. The point is, let's talk about Kelvin Harmon for a minute. This was a guy that he underwhelmed. I mean, flat out, he did not have a good combine. His SPARQ score is still 53rd percentile, mostly because that speed score is in the 70th percentile. Comps to Mike Williams on Player Profile. And to be honest with you, I would be happy if he turned into a Mike Williams style player. I always thought that Kelvin Harmon was a pretty smooth player considering how big he is, and he uses his physicality well. Still, to me, some of the best hands in the class. I think he's very sure-handed, and he's going to have this rapport with Dwayne Haskins, another young quarterback. Josh Doxson has been a punchline. I've heard the Trey Quinn thing. I don't know where Washington is on this. They also took McLaurin in the 3rd round, so they selected a player even before Harmon. But I think Harmon's a guy that's slipping in dynasty drafts, primarily because the combine wasn't good. The fact that he got drafted certainly saved him. But I would say at this point, after some of the shakeups that have happened in the league, I used to have him and Gary Jennings kind of side by side. But with the recent Doug Baldwin news, a guy like Gary Jennings to me has surpassed Kelvin Harmon as an option. And he's going way up. And that's a guy that I would be chasing. I hate to shoehorn that in as I'm talking about my guy, Kelvin Harmon, that came on the Sonic Truth Dynasty podcast. I asked him about Game of Thrones. He said he did not watch him. Good
Egregious.
For you, Kelvin Harmon.
Egregious.
Good for you.
No wonder he slipped, bro.
The show has been terrible. Absolutely terrible. I would rather watch Kelvin Harmon's combine again than any episode from season 8. So he is my sneaky, my sneaky good player. And let's get to one of the last ones here, man. Let's talk about Bran. Who does absolutely nothing for you in this class? Can I go first and then you can do yours?
Please.
Mine's Riley Ridley. Okay, who's yours?
Bro, Bran has been, you hit on it earlier, bro. Are we gonna get like Bran's storyline at all tied up? He's been one of the most curious characters for sure, but he's had a couple moments this season, but in a large part, man, he's just kind of been there, and he's done nothing for me. He's done nothing for a lot of people. So I think the two obvious answers here are certainly Ridley, who you just so eloquently hit on here for us. The other guy that I would throw in this bucket, I was kind of vocal about it pre-draft, was Benny Snell. Again, despite he had the production for sure, but other than that, just kind of is. We've talked about it before, how you should. I think it was with Danny Kelly. It was you have to have some sense of watching these guys has to be fun. I watched Benny Snell. I had no fun. He was putting up numbers, and then we know he's not athletic as well. The name that I had written down here is not one that I would kind of put in that same category, but a player that I wanted to talk about. So I threw his name here, and we can kind of go back and forth here for a little bit. But Devin Singletary lands in a really interesting situation. He's got 36-year-old Frank Gore in Buffalo. He's got soon-to-be 31-year-old LaShawn McCoy in Buffalo. He's got T.J. Yeldon in Buffalo. So there's kind of a somewhat of a log jam, whether short-term or long-term, whatever the case may be. So there's some bodies in front of him, but again, especially in the case of Gore, who might actually just play forever, but there is a path to touches, And when we talk about having fun watching these players, Devin Singletary's tape was a blast to watch. He was a human highlight reel. He actually was reminiscent at times of I think Danny Kelly might have even talked him up as kind of a Frank Gore type runner. There was plenty of LaShawn McCoy, coincidentally enough, LaShawn McCoy comparisons for Devin Singletary as well. But we know Devin Singletary is undersized. We know he did himself no favors at the combine.
Nope.
So despite those two kind of glaring red flags, so to speak, working against him, he does land in a pretty interesting situation. So while he might not do nothing for me, and he's someone that I'm going to have kind of in the mix in my top 36 as far as dynasty rookie rankings are concerned. He is a player that I thought was interesting enough that I think deserves a little bit of mic time here. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about Devin Singletary now and going forward.
Oh my gosh. Well, first off, let me just say this about Devin Singletary. He may not be big, but neither is the running back that's been leading this offense for the past few seasons. LaShawn McCoy, not a big back. So that's at least a favorable comp in his case. The athleticism, definitely not there. But when you look back at 2017, had a very Bryce Love-ish type season, 2,100 scrimmage yards, 10 yards per reception, 19 catches. He had 26 catches as a freshman. So he's flashing ability to catch. He is electric as a runner. He can be a volume runner. He had 32 touchdowns in 2017. I don't even know how that happens. I'm not even sure that's is that even a real thing? College Dominator was through the roof, but look, the Bills put draft capital in him. 3rd round, 10th pick. That's what you want to see out of these guys. I like the comp. I don't necessarily totally agree with it, but they've got Kadeem Carey. I thought Kadeem Carey was a lot more of a smash player, looking to make contact. I don't necessarily look at Singletary that way. He can finish, but like you said, a little more elusive. I'm not. I think as a dynasty owner, he's a guy that I'm probably grabbing in the 2nd round because. If the Lord of Light's not real, explain to me how Frank Gore is still playing football.
Bro, he has been blessed by the Red Witch and whoever else has been blessing people out here, man. He is gonna play forever. He's gonna play forever.
Did the Red Witch kill Carlos Williams so that Frank Gore could play forever? I don't understand it. Anyways, look, I like Devin Singletary enough. I think he went to the right situation. Had he gone to, say, Jacksonville behind Leonard Fournette, a younger athletic back, I may be a little more concerned, but this is a team that realizes they've got aged veterans. LaShawn McCoy is going to lose the juice eventually. Frank Gore cannot play forever. TJ Yeldon is a career sort of backup player. I don't think he's ever going to be a dominant lead runner. So Devin Singletary may have his opportunities. Now, the issue with Devin Singletary is if I'm drafting him, I am drafting him on the premise that when he gets his chance and he hits, I'm selling him. Because I don't believe in Devin Singletary as a long-term fixture in Buffalo. Right. He doesn't have the draft capital of a McCoy or a Frank Gore, even a TJ Yeldon for that matter. And that's why Yeldon's on a 2nd contract, because he's been decent in the NFL. So I'm not sure that he ever gets there, but if he hits, you sell him. And that's why I would be going after Devin Singletary. So, okay. All right, man. We got to move on to the next one. How about a Theon Greyjoy comp? You want to do a Theon comp?
Talk to me, man.
All right, man.
Talk to me.
Who's most likely to get their wiener ripped off during a drill and minicamp?
That's not what we're talking about here. That's not what we're talking about.
Oh, you know what? That was the old question. I was supposed to ask you who's most likely to redeem themselves is what I meant.
This one, again, for those who have been following my nonsensical blabber on the timeline here, man, everyone knows that, Hakeem Butler, to the dismay again of our pal, Matthew Kelly, was one of my guys, my wide receiver too. Loved Hakeem Butler. We heard plenty of rumblings from those who are actually connected to the league that there were concerns that there was a great divide between #draft Twitter and the actual league. The league didn't view him as highly as some of us did on the internet. There were concerns about his possible late breakout. The biggest red flag was his drops. He had some concerns with the drops, and whether it was concentration drops, whatever the case was, the league likes their wide receivers, I suppose, to catch passes. So there was some concerns about Hakeem Butler in that regard. Still, again, going back to the tape, some of the most dominant performances that I watched this past offseason was watching Hakeem Butler just dwarf defensive backs, man, and just straight moss dudes. So had a blast watching him. On player profile, man, a very generous Brandon Marshall comparison. 6'5", 227, 88th percentile college dominator, 97th percentile college yards per reception, a late breakout age, which is again, for those who do value that heavily, as they it should be valued to some extent, that is a concern. But again, more positives: 89th percentile Spark X score for, again, a guy that's 6'5", 227, 97th percentile speed score for his size, a 96th percentile catch radius. This guy is, a kind of a player that you would sit down in the living room and you would kind of, draft up and create in Madden. These players don't necessarily come around that often. There are some concerns about these types of players hitting, given their size, given their play style, but again, talking about landing spots with Hakeem Butler, has a chance to kind of shake things up in Arizona and kind of outplay his fourth round draft capital. So for me, kind of an easy choice here. Someone that I was obviously very high on to kind of start things off with. Obviously slipped the league didn't necessarily agree with my evaluation, with a lot of people's evaluation, so maybe not a slip in their eyes. He was selected probably right where everyone thought he was going to go, but someone that I think can easily outplay his current draft capital, and I do like that Arizona offense for him.
And something important that I was told, when you look at where he was selected first pick of day 3, and that's actually a really important factor because they have the whole night to go over every player that's left in the draft when they make a decision. And so they showed up on draft day at the fourth round, first pick, and Hakeem Butler was their guy. So it shows that it was a really cerebral selection. So whoever was at 402 is probably who ripped their wiener off. But I'll tell you what about Hakeem Butler. I mean, there was a lot of people calling him Bustler. I don't think he's as bad as he was given credit for, but similar to DK Metcalf, very easy to stand behind the data and call these guys outliers if they succeed and hold history against them and say they're going to bust. I get it, because history is against them. It's a very difficult thing for these guys to be a success. Now, he was drafted in the fourth round, which also is going to lower his potential, and he went to an offense with a lot of weapons. I like Hakeem Butler. I'm glad that he went to Arizona. I think that going in the fourth round took the pressure off him. I think that the expectation for him is going to be a little lesser now, similar to DK Metcalf. I mean, I know Metcalf is carrying a second round draft pedigree, but one pick later, it would have been a third round draft pedigree. So I'm a fan of Hakeem Butler. I'm just curious, how he's going to work out in Arizona, a team that's got a lot of weapons, that drafted another wide receiver 2 rounds before Hakeem Butler, which we will get to as well. So, okay, man, let me ask you this question. This is dead serious. No more joking. I don't want to joke.
No more joking, man. Very serious pod right now.
Please don't smile. This is a serious pod. Look, if a Lannister always pays their debts, then who from this class is most likely to shit the bed? Can I go first?
I want you to go first.
Okay. Riley Ridley. Okay, who's yours?
So again, Riley Ridley is a very good answer. I really like that answer. Benny Snell for me, I'd probably throw him out there again. I'm gonna throw another bad player out there for you. Daniel Jones, a quarterback from Duke who stinks. Daniel Jones stinks.
Wait, but didn't you go 6th pick overall?
6th pick overall, man. But let me tell you, he's not good. He's bad. Daniel Jones is bad.
Oh my God, you never liked this.
I had a lot of fun on Twitter.com when his name was called. I think everyone. I think the worst part was a lot of people kind of felt like that. There's always kind of those rumblings, for the draft. Kind of these leaks start coming in, and there was a lot of talk about one team falling in love with Daniel Jones, and everyone kind of started off with, hey man, imagine if that one team was the Giants a year after selecting Saquon Barkley. Imagine if the Giants fell in love with Daniel Jones the year after after all that. And sure enough, man, our prayers were answered. We all had a blast online. The Giants, the Giants did something not very smart. Daniel Jones is not very good. I don't have really much to talk about as far as Daniel Jones, and the fact that I just don't think he's good. And I keep coming back to that second to last collegiate game. He played Wake Forest, man. He got mopped like 50-7. Daniel Jones is not the guy you want leading your franchise, man. We gotta get Saquon Barkley out of there somehow.
It's I don't have a lot of takes on Daniel Jones. I will say this though, it seems like such a dysfunctional organization, and as a quarterback going into that situation, it's just so difficult. You're behind a veteran who thinks he's still got the juice. The Giants have come out and said that Eli has got years left in him. Clearly, they thought that Daniel Jones was going to be the future. From all accounts, Daniel Jones was overdrafted. This is a team that just got rid of a generational wide receiver, so no help there. I mean, they've got the tight end and Evan Ingram. They added Golden Tate. I don't understand. That's not gonna solve the issue here. I'm just not a fan of what's going on there, and I don't really know what their game plan is going forward. I mean, how many games are we gonna get out of Eli Manning before?
Too many.
Right? I mean, but really though, so if they start the season 0-5 with Manning, do we get Daniel Jones?
Yikes! It's just like what's the lesser of two evils, I guess.
I mean, when you're picked 6 of the first round, isn't the expectation that you're coming out year 1 and you're going to sling that ball?
Unfortunately for the Giants, I think that's exactly what possibly the game plan is. But again, man, like you said, they still talk up Eli, and it's just the whole situation is looks very funny in the light, man. It's just it's something else.
I don't want to pretend like I've got a crystal ball or I can see into the future. But you know what? You know who can? Brand can see into the future, right? Or maybe the past.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but
whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of this question, it's the future. So since Brand can see into the future, and maybe he can't, if he was a dynasty owner today, right now, May 14th or whatever it is, who is he selecting at the 101 in a start 1 QB league?
For me, I have if I was Brand, if I was thinking like Brand, if I was talking to my boy Brand, if I was to guess what Brand was thinking, I know for a fact, without a shadow of a doubt, Brand is thinking Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders is the 101. I do think it's somewhat close between him and maybe a couple other players as well, but I do have Sanders sitting at the top of my list. I imagine, again, like I said, our guy Brand has Sanders sitting there as well. I love it comes down to draft capital, a combination of draft capital, college production, college pedigree, despite playing behind Saquon Barkley, and in this class in particular, where we were just handed a bunch of really questionable athletes at the position, Miles Sanders actually looked the part of an NFL running back from an athleticism standpoint. So he kind of hits the trifecta as far as the adequate production, the athleticism, and the landing spot, which is gonna hopefully parlay into the projected volume that we want to see, whether it's kind of full force year 1. But again, I think long term, especially from a dynasty standpoint, man, Miles Sanders feels about as safe as you can get with that, giving you that higher ceiling as well.
Yeah, and I'm with you, man. I put Miles Sanders as well in here. Not much competition on this roster. Josh Adams is at this point probably toast, right? I mean, it's safe to assume that Miles Sanders is going to come in there with his draft pedigree in a class that faded the running back position like we expected. Josh Jacobs goes earlier in the first round, which was an expectation for many, but Miles Sanders, second running back off the board, great athleticism, 77th percentile SPARQ score, as you alluded to, played behind a generational talent in Saquon Barkley, but when he got his chance, he played very well. So this is a player that people should be excited about in an ascending offense. And Andre Dillard, left tackle, comes in. We're going to get a healthy Carson Wentz with no Nick Foles looming behind him, stressing him out, making him worry about things. They added JJ Arcega-Whiteside. I just think that this is an offense that has all the critical pieces in place, from the defense to the offense. And the defense, if it's playing well enough, man, they could look to put the ball in his hands a lot and run out some of that clock, grind out some of that time, play possession football. And I'm a fan of his skill set. This is a guy that can catch the ball, runs really well, smooth runner, somebody that I think a lot of us went back. You were a big fan of Miles Sanders, but a lot of us went back when we saw that athleticism. You see that pop and you go, okay, I got to go back and see what was different. When you really go back and look at him, you just see how smooth of a runner he was. And I think in that offense, with as many weapons as it has, he could be a great weapon. With a guy like Ertz in the offense opening things up, it could just be really special going forward. So I'm with you, man. I had the same.
You mentioned Josh Adams as kind of a player that could be I won't say breathing down his neck, but obviously giving him a run for his money as far as touches and stuff like that. What do we make about Jordan Howard going to Philadelphia? Obviously, we saw kind of maybe his floor and his ceiling in Chicago, really kind of some question marks as far as his ability as a receiver, but he was utilized in that 3-down role before in Chicago. Do you see him coming into Philadelphia and kind of doing much of the same and kind of really latching on to that role initially, or doing enough just to kind of stall Miles Sanders and kind of keep us anxious dynasty owners kind of wanting more and wanting more sooner?
Here's my take on the Howard thing. Howard was traded for a conditional 6th-round pick that could become a 5th-round pick. So it's not like they invested that much in Jordan Howard, a guy that has the history in the league. He's played well. But this is a guy that a lot of people were up and down on. We thought that Jordan Howard was going to kind of wash out. We saw the Bears decide to make a move. They didn't need him. They've got Cohen. They drafted Montgomery. They signed Mike Davis. So they made some moves. I look at him as competition because he's been good in the NFL. But I also look at it like the Eagles put real draft capital into Miles Sanders. And he is a top-level athlete who has this pedigree going forward. And as much as Jordan Howard has been a good player in the NFL, they didn't put much into him. So I'm not sure that there's really a necessary concern that he's going to take that role. I think Miles Sanders was put there to be the lead back, but I definitely think that Howard could be in there in the mix for some carries. And who knows what their plan is on game day. I mean, this is a Philadelphia team, maybe not necessarily under this coaching staff, that's tried to mix guys in, has tried to add in a pass catching back and a speed back and to make different things happen. And Miles Sanders is kind of that smooth, sort of all gears type player, maybe not elite speed, but fast. And I don't know. I think Jordan Howard obviously has a place in this offense, but that trade just really, to me, just kind of just stunk, man. A 6th-round pick, it's like that's nothing. It could be a 5th. And even at a 5th-round pick, I realize in the NFL that's still a decent pick to own, but that's not much investment in a guy like Jordan Howard going forward.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, man. So here, how about this one? This is a question, man. I got some questions in here, man, that I kind of coded them with abbreviations.
I'm nervous, bro.
So,
I scrolled through the show sheet and I saw your encryption and yeah. I started sweating.
This is a good one right here. Okay, man. So tell me this, Ryan. Who fell further, Emmanuel Hall or King Tomlin?
Man, Hall's slip was something, bro. I think a player that you and I were both fairly high on. I think for me, he was certainly a top 10 wideout. Much like Hakeem Butler, where the league kind of viewed his drops and perhaps late breakout as a red flag. With Emmanuel Hall, it was all about the ability to stay on the field, his injury history. But again, with Emmanuel Hall, much like Hakeem Butler, we know he's a top tier athlete. In a class filled with a lot of interesting speed guys and kind of deep threats. Hall, for his size, 6'2", can straight move, man, and he can blow the top off. I know there was a lot of work done looking at his splits, Drew Lock splits rather, with and without Hall on the field, which were really eye opening. And Hall's definitely a quarterback's friend, man, and someone that you want on the field. It's just, again, it's his ability to stay on the field. So hence the unfortunate tumble in the draft. A player that I'm still really high on, and a player that one of us could have thrown up here for someone that we think is going to kind of outpace and outplay their draft slot, because I think he is that good. Talent's there. It's just kind of stuff that he maybe necessarily can't control as far as the unlucky injury breaks and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you got to be scared if you're Riley Ridley, because A, you're bad, and B, he went to the Bears, right? So this is just another one of these guys. Man, they got so many receivers in this group. This might be one of the more impressive deep groups. I mean, aside from Riley Ridley, who's just so bad, just so terrible. Not really sure about him, but I looked at Emmanuel Hall like the league looked at him like, look, we've already done the Brashad Perryman thing. It didn't work. I'm not sure I'm ready to pull the trigger again. It's too soon. We're still getting over the first one. Perriman's still like trying to wash out of the league. Like when you flush the toilet and it's circling and it doesn't quite make it down. So you gotta go for a second flush. And then you're like, come on, I gotta go. I don't have time to keep watching this thing go. And then it looks like it goes and it does a blah, and then it comes back up. And you're like, look, I just don't. So you don't flush it. You just walk off. Look, all right, let's go to the next one. Here's dude, you know what? I was joking about being serious, but this time I want to be serious.
Okay.
Serious. No
very serious pod. Very serious pod.
Please take this seriously.
No smile.
No more screwing around. So, we know that Cersei Lannister is somewhere beneath a pile of rubble right now. Can't do this with a straight face. Do you think Mecole Hardman can replace Tyreek Hill's production?
Man, obviously it goes without saying, the whole Hill mess, man, is a mess. It's unfortunate for reasons that we don't need to talk about here. Strictly on the field, and I can't emphasize that enough. Strictly on the field as a football player, as a contributor to the Chiefs' offense, man, Tyreek Hill was somewhat of a mythical figure out there, man. A unicorn, especially paired with Patty Mahomes, man. I mean, what he did last year, man, over almost 14, over 1,400 yards, 12 scores, just an absolute burner, man. And a straight up difference versus someone that can hurt you at any given time. And we saw the Chiefs move up for Hardman, which is definitely, should definitely kind of set some bells off to, prospective dynasty owners. Obviously the Chiefs in an Andy Reid offense and a Patrick Mahomes offense saw enough in this guy to perhaps mirror the output that a Tyreek Hill had. But at the end of the day, it's a really high bar. It's not fair to Hill. It's especially not fair to Hardman, who again does have an interesting profile, doesn't have the production, the college dominator rating's not there, 19th percentile I'm player profile, but does have the required athleticism, 84th percentile Spark X score, can definitely move. Isn't Tyreek Hill fast, but again has that speed to take the top off. I think he's someone from both a fantasy and a real life, football standpoint that is going to get involved early, is going to get the volume. But again, it's so hard to, you're not going to replicate what Tyreek Hill did, what Tyreek Hill meant to that offense. You can hope to kind of fill in the gaps as best you can. But again, I think that's, if you're drafting him high in hopes of him being Tyreek Hill or better, you're certainly setting yourself up for some level of disappointment.
Man, and I'm super confused, man. Sammy Watkins has lost his mind, which means that Hardman must be a stud.
He's pushing him again, bro. He's pushing him.
Just burners running down the field. I did a calculation and basically took all the passes that went over 20 yards. Basically every pass that was thrown by a quarterback that went over 20 yards or greater, so that could be 40 plus yard passes, everything, and put them together, and then I created a percentage based on the amount of attempts that they threw. And of qualified quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes was number 1 in the league at 15.52% of his passes going for greater than 20 yards. So when you think about that, they added a speed guy to this offense. Now, this is a guy coming out of college that didn't have a whole ton of production. I know we beat the living shit out of Riley Ridley for this, for good reason. But when you look at Hardman, who went well before Riley Ridley in this class, I was told that Riley Ridley was the best receiver at Georgia.
Clown takes, bro.
Wait a minute. And then Hardman, who plays on the same team, thank God Riley Ridley, his teammate score is going to get a jump because at least Hardman got drafted in a respectable position. Can't beat this guy down enough. The point is, Hardman has the 4.33 speed, 99th percentile. Now, no, he's not necessarily Tyreek Hill, and replacing Tyreek Hill's production is going to be borderline impossible because Tyreek Hill exceeded expectation by miles and miles and miles. There's very few players in the NFL that were on that level at all. With that being said, this is a guy who is a big play threat on a team that likes to take shots down the field. And with Sammy Watkins' brain being in outer space right now, and Travis Kelce being the main option in this offense, and the assumption that Tyreek Hill is either going to be suspended, I'm assuming, or cut. I don't know. I really don't know. It's hard to speculate at this point what's going on, but there's possibly legal trouble that's going to take place. So from a dynasty context where you want to pay attention to these things, Hardman's a sneaky player that you might want to own in an offense that likes to take shots on a team that's got a really good tight end that has to be covered by a safety or a linebacker's got to move with them. Sammy Watkins, who they're just going to have run 9 routes all game because he's lost his fucking mind. I mean, I don't know what is going to happen with this offense, but I know that I want to own a premier player in it. And despite the fact that Hardman doesn't necessarily check a lot of the boxes that we would for a player that you would desire to go after, I think that Hardman is still a guy that you might want to go for at the end of the first round. He might be at that 11, 12 pick because I would probably take him over arcega-whiteside. I would probably take him over, I'd have to pull up a list in front of me here, but there's quite a few guys that I think I would honestly consider taking him over just because he went to a prolific offense with a prolific young quarterback, and they could be, tied together for the foreseeable future. So that's somebody that I want to own. So, okay, man. So here's another one for you. Let's talk Darrell Henderson because we kind of touched on him, but just not enough. Here's the real question in a Game of Thrones centric episode.
Sure.
Is playing behind Todd Gurley basically the same as being in the Night's Watch?
Yeah, it would appear as though you're being excommunicated, exiled.
Yes.
It's a not ideal landing spot, and that's to run it back to last year, man. That's how I felt about my boy John Kelly, man. I was big on John Kelly coming out of Tennessee, and then to see him land behind Todd Gurley, man, it was the air coming right out of my balloon, or me, taking the black and walking off to the Night's Watch. But man, it's a different story this year. I think as you and I kind of both suggested before, we are both very high on Darrell Henderson. I think the latest reports out of Rams camp, man, is I think Gurley's either slated to have surgery or some sort of procedure done to his knee. So I think the knee concerns, again, we saw it last year, wasn't available for the playoff run, and then the playoff games, just wasn't healthy enough. The knee wasn't cooperating, which was kind of the concern of his coming out of college as well. So if those knee troubles have kind of flared back up and might be here to stay, Todd Gurley is a special talent. So not someone you wanna see down and out due to injury, but it's kind of sounding like, or at least the selection might indicate that there's more beneath the surface. On top of all that, on top of the Gurley injury question marks, we've heard McVay talk up Darrell Henderson. We know there was a decent investment there as far as draft capital, third third round for Darrell Henderson. The Rams GM Les Snead came out and said he envisions an Alvin Kamara type role for Darrell Henderson. Obviously, I know that's almost cliche at this point. Every year since Alvin Kamara, man, dozens of backs are touted as the next Kamara and stuff like that. But in this offense, with this coaching staff, I think that vision can be realized to an extent. So, man, we could be looking at, I mean, at the very least, floor level, we're looking at an elite handcuff who could, if the cards fall right with, again, injuries and stuff like that, no one really knows, but the picture isn't necessarily rosy right now for Todd Gurley. So we could see that volume kind of open up sooner rather than later, in a prolific offense, as you just talked about with the Chiefs. I'm not putting Goff on Patrick Mahomes level, but there are pieces in place. I love the play caller in Los Angeles, and Darrell Henderson, man. We know all about him as a college player, man. As far as what he can do, his explosion is next to none in this class. So in this offense, man, you have to be buying Darrell Henderson. And again, if this was last year, I'd be a little more concerned. But this year, going forward, Todd Gurley, man, there might be more question marks about him than anyone else on that roster.
God damn it! You know what? Darrell Henderson is our generation's Ben Tate. That's what just fucking happened here. But let me also tell you this. We've heard reports that the Rams and McVay, they drafted Darrell Henderson because of his dynamic playmaking ability. They want to mix up the formations, potentially two backs on the field, or try some different things. Last year, the Rams ranked number 2 in the league in wide receiver rushing attempts. This is a team that's tried to do some things outside the box. So obviously they're willing to test things out and try new formations and try things that are unorthodox. And I think that's where Darrell Henderson fits into this mix. And if Todd Gurley does have surgery or doesn't come back as the same player or misses time or flat out just is playing like shit like we've seen him do towards the end of last year, probably because he was hurt, who's to say Darrell Henderson doesn't get his run? Hard to put it back in the bottle after he plays as well as he does. This is a guy that had back-to-back 8.9 yards per carry for 2 years,
numbers.
Man. 63 college receptions. This is one of the more prolific running backs that we have ever seen come out of college from a yards per carry standpoint. 2,200 all scrimmage yards in 2018. Number 10 in the Heisman voting. This is a very good player, and for that reason, a team in the Los Angeles Rams, knowing that running back is a replaceable position, despite the fact that they have arguably the best back in the league, and they could have had anybody else in the draft at 306. But they took Darrell Henderson here, and it means a lot. And if I'm a Todd Gurley owner, I'm honest to God considering selling, or I need to own Darrell Henderson, because there is a very real chance that behind this offense, the blocks the way it does, with as many receivers, Cooper Kupp is going to come back healthy. They have an athletic tight end. They have a quarterback that can sling it around the field that's great in the system that he's in. It's going to open up a lot, and Darrell Henderson is going to make a lot of big, explosive plays. And when he starts doing that, man, you cannot put that back in the bottle. You just can't do it. And like you talked about, you look at his combine, man. He ran a 4.49 at 208 pounds, 5'8", man. He's going to be slippery. He's not a big back, but very elusive. Never switches the ball, though. Never. Always carries it in one hand. Go back and watch him. It's an absolute annoyance. He's lucky Peanut Tillman's not still in the league. He punched that right out. Let's move to the next question. So, what was more depressing for you? DK Metcalf's 3-cone or every episode thus far of Season 8 of Game of Thrones?
You are a jerk. You are a jerk.
Can I go first?
Go ahead.
Every episode of Season 8 so far.
Bro, there will be no Game of Thrones slander from me this episode or ever. So I'm going with DK Metcalf's 3-cone, man. Obviously, I think we might have talked about it in one of the pre-combine shows that you and I did. I think a lot was made. I don't want to say about nothing, but it was certainly put under the microscope. Again, he showed up to the combine, man. I mean, I'm not even going to read off the numbers. They were otherworldly. Immediately, you saw the Calvin Johnson comparisons. You saw all these wild, player comparisons getting thrown out there. he's a freak of nature, man. No one's denying that. Obviously, he showed up, ran a worse than Tom Brady 3-cone, which is concerning. It is concerning to an extent. But again, I think a lot was made out of it, especially after the fact. It was interesting that prior to the combine, prior to the testing, people watched film. There was concerns about injuries and the lack of volume and the lack of available film because of the injury. But never once did anyone really bring up, his ability to turn, his agility, whatever the case may be. But once those numbers kind of went official, people kind of came back, and again, we're more interested in kind of planting flags and stuff like that. So for me, it definitely is. It's a concern to an extent. If you go to mock draftable and you look at his spider web there, man, it is a better version of Martavis Bryant. So for me, I know there was the wide range of comparisons, and they were all top tier. Josh Gordon makes a lot of sense, but for me, DK Metcalf, man, if he's at his absolute best, I see a better version of Martavis Bryant, which I was a big Martavis Bryant fan, not obviously excluding all the off-field stuff. On the field, at his peak, he was a game breaker in a sense. He's certainly a difference maker. So DK Metcalf's just a bigger, stronger, faster version of Martavis Bryant. So if that's how he ends up his career, if that's how his career kind of plays out, you got a really, really good player, especially paired with someone like Russie. So three cone definitely concerned, but not the big deal that a lot of people were kind of making it out to be.
Man, first off, DK Metcalf went to the Seattle Seahawks. Arguably, there was not a place he could have gone that was a better fit for him. I mean, going to play with Russell Wilson is a big factor. Now, I talked about it on the Sonic Truth podcast. I talked to one of the top strength and conditioning coaches in the country, Kurt Hester, and I brought up the agility score. And I discussed it on there, but he talked about how this can be increased. It's not end of the world. It's hard to make a guy run faster. It's hard to make a guy run a 4.33 at this size, but this agility can be worked on. Now, 4th percentile is what he tested at, but there's potential to make it a lot better than this. And in an offense with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, I'm not totally down on DK Metcalf, but in context of this question, that 3-cone was absolutely awful. Was terrible, but not as terrible as watching N'Keal Harry.
Next question. No more Game of Thrones slander, buddy.
Okay, that's it. No more Game of Thrones. Okay, so N'Keal Harry goes to the Patriots. Did that not feel like when Danny coughed up a dragon to the Night King? Was that like, could he have gone to a better situation? Just a worse organization that didn't need him. They didn't deserve him.
Bro, this was devastating to watch for fans of other football teams that aren't the New England Patriots. The Patriots haven't gone out of their way to select a wide receiver high. I was scrolling back through Pro Football Reference, man. The last few, quote unquote high round selections, they drafted Malcolm Mitchell in the 4th in 2016. Before that, it was Aaron Dobson in round 2 in 2013. Then you got to kind of keep scrolling after that. They haven't had a first round wideout, let alone a first round wideout that was being touted as arguably this class's best. For me, man, and N'Keal Harry was my wide receiver 1. I kept coming back to an Alshon Jeffrey type player when I was watching him play. People are gonna knock his ability, off the line, his feet, able to kind of separate initially. And that while that may not be his game, and while he does have room to improve in that regard, where he does win and win often, you can use him essentially all over the field, whether across the middle. He's great after the catch, but where he makes his money and where he constantly, showed up on tape was his ability at the catch point, So Tom Brady, man, is either going to throw you open or he's going to just throw it up there and let you get it. So couldn't really ask for a better quarterback pairing. Obviously, there are concerns about how much longer Brady's going to play, what's going to happen in New England post Tom Brady and or post Bill Belichick. Josh McDaniels slated to take over, whatever the case may be. So there are question marks after this current kind of regime steps aside. But Harry lands in a spot that he could be in that 1-1 discussion. Should kind of transition and kind of get an opportunity right away. I know we've heard about the Patriots playbook. Is it really friendly to these younger players or players coming in from the outside. But again, I think the draft capital alone says a lot. The Patriots don't draft wide receivers high, so they saw something in Harry. Now especially with their tight end, retiring, they have some targets to replace, and so Harry's going to kind of get all that he can handle.
Yeah, there's gonna be a boatload of targets available. I mean, when you look at guys that have left, so Rob Gronkowski retires, there's 72. Josh Gordon, 68 there. Chris Hogan gone, 55. I mean, we're arguably talking about 150 to 170 targets that are available. So he's gonna end up in an offense that is still gonna function, through the short area game, through the running backs. But he couldn't have gone to a better situation today. Now, my concern is just like yours. How long are Tom Brady and Bill Belichick going to play together? And who is behind Tom Brady? Because the issue for me here, the quarterback on that roster last year that had the second most pass attempts was Julian Edelman. Now, I don't think Julian Edelman is going to be the quarterback behind Tom Brady. My concern is that when Tom Brady and Bill Belichick leave, they're going to leave the car with no gas in the tank and just gonna be sitting in the driveway, and the check engine light's gonna come on, and all of a sudden you're left holding the bag. But that's the problem with the majority of this league. If you drafted somebody on the Chargers, if you drafted Michael Thomas with the Saints, if you drafted Juju Smith in Pittsburgh, it's all around the league, right? Like, this is an issue everywhere. But you're not taking these players because of this situation. Yeah. And I'm with you. N'Keal Harry is my definite wide receiver 1 in this class. And for me, it's not particularly close, especially after he went round 1 to the Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, I think the thing with New England too is, and I might have been going back and forth with, I might have posted some early dynasty thoughts or something like that, and I had Harry obviously very, very high for the reasons that you and I just shared. But I think a team and a front office like New England, who has had success for a ridiculous amount of time, I would imagine that. This is kind of me just kind of speculating here, but I would imagine that one of their, pillars, or one of the things that they want to be left with when, Bill rides off, Tom rides off, they want to be able to kind of hand this thing off to the next group, the next GM, the next head coach, the next quarterback. They want to hand this thing off to show that, hey, we were good with these guys. Obviously they were the best to ever do it, but part of our success is the fact that we can get this done with another whole group of guys. So I'm hoping, if I'm investing in Harry early, that there is some sort of logical succession plan there in New England, and that, as you said, when Bill walks away and Tom's no longer under center.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be concerned about in New England, but that doesn't mean that you're not drafting N'Keal Harry. All right, man, I'm gonna skip down to a question down here. This is another question that I've abbreviated. I'm
Terrifying.
not sure that you've got it figured out.
Terrifying.
So here we go, man. Who would win in a 40-yard dash? Elijah Holyfield or Samwell Tarly?
Dude, wow.
Tough call.
Very, very, very good question, man. Elijah Holyfield, man, was a player that might have snuck his way up to my top or 10, 15 or something like that. Again, the player had good tape. He was a highly touted recruit, finally kind of found his way in that Georgia backfield post Nick Chubb. And he was a fun watch for the most part. But man, showing up to Indianapolis running what was it, a 4.7 something?
7.8.
Bro, you and I might be able to run 4.72s or something like that.
Oh wow, thank you.
So I mean, but the thing is it was a poor showing in Indianapolis, and again, it's not, the athletic testing isn't the be all end all, but it is important, and it should be considered. So those are some pretty alarming numbers. And then he kind of doubled down and had a similar showing, if not worse, at the Georgia Pro Day. So totally confirmed, kind of the player that the athleticism that he has, which is not next level. And it's super cliche to say, you look back at the tape and he plays faster, he runs faster, and that might be the case. But man, even if you kind of got that impression, you got that inkling watching the tape, because again, the tape was good, but numbers that bad. make you second guessing yourself. It's just like there's really no excuse for that. I mean, it's really hard to tout a player knowing that they're that slow. Especially that position.
How the hell? Okay, 26 reps on the bench, 89th percentile. Did this guy skip fucking leg day or something? How did he have basically 9th percentile in everything that involved his legs, but his bench press was through the roof?
Yeah, he's got his dad's arms, bro.
It's one of the most
Papa Holyfield.
I don't understand exactly how it Papa Holyfield. Yeah, I don't understand how it happened, but he's not 21 years old yet, so he's young. So at least he's got that to go with his undrafted pedigree. So let me move on to what I believe might be the last question.
Yes.
Last Game of Thrones related question. I'm going to skip one of these here. Was Arizona betting on Andy Isabella over your boy Hakeem Butler, like that time that everybody thought that the Mountain was going to lose to the Red Viper of Dorne?
It's a beautifully phrased question.
Thank you.
Number one, man. I as much as I love Hakeem Butler, still do. Again, talked about him before. How he's my bet to kind of exceed expectations. Isabella, in addition to a guy like Daryl Henderson, the Arizona staff and front office is saying about him, they came away feeling like they got 4 top 35 players, Isabella being one of them. So they were obviously super, super high on him. The more I listen to what Arizona says, the more that I look back at the type of player he was in college, at the Senior Bowl. The production was there. We know the athleticism is there. He is legit, track. He has legit track speed. So again, all he does is check boxes. He has the draft capital now. He's going to an offense that is set to evolve. Obviously, new coach, new quarterback. Larry Fitzgerald's on his last year or two. They got Christian Kirk there still, but in general, a lot of those seats are still unoccupied. There's a lot of volume there to be claimed. And again, I really like the quarterback pairing. That offense could be a lot of fun if Cliff comes in there and kind of, the hope is that he's the next Sean McVay, right? He's the next innovative play caller. And I think with someone like Murray, paired with Isabella's speed, it could be exciting. And so Isabella's someone that I'm very, very high on. Someone that I initially had inside my top 12 as far as rookie rankings are concerned. And he's only, again, every time I go back and look at this kid, man, and kind of connect the dots, he's someone that I only move higher. So man, Isabella's definitely a name that I'm going to try to own a lot of.
And he's another one of those names that's going to be, kind of towards the end of that first round, early second round, because he's got the draft capital. He went to an offense that, by all accounts, Kyler Murray has no excuse. I mean, he's got weapons everywhere. I mean, down to Larry Fitzgerald being a veteran receiver that he can go to, a big-time player, and Hakeem Butler that nobody thought was going to get drafted 2 rounds after Andy Isabella. Nobody projected that. But then you've got Andy Isabella, of course, the player we're talking about now, highly athletic player, comps to Tyler Lockett on Player Profiler, a little bit of that Brandon Cooks in there, I've heard. And then, of course, Christian Kirk, who is an absolutely incredible college producer. So there are weapons all around this field. Now, the question is, with David Johnson in the backfield, a player who we've heard time and time again that this offense wants to function through, what's the volume like for these players? Could this be an offense that spreads it out? I mean, is Isabella going to become a guy that sees 89? I mean, a Seattle-like offense where David Johnson's going to see 285 carries. You're going to have Chase Edmonds mixed in there. Isabella's going to have 85 targets. Christian Kirk will be in that maybe 100 target range. Hakeem Butler will be in that 80 target range. Larry Fitzgerald for his final year probably won't see a ton, but it's like, how is it going to shake out? How many times are they going to ask Kyler Murray to throw the football? That's really the question. Is he going to be put on the sort of that Teddy Bridgewater, Russell Wilson early career arc, or are they going to let him throw it early? I know Kyler Murray's got the arm, and certainly they've put the weapons around him. So it'll be interesting to see how these players develop in this offense and how much volume there actually is, because as much as we fall in love with the talent of a player, and again, we just talked about it with N'Keal Harry, talent over everything. draft capital over a lot of things. But when you go to an offense like this, it's fair to question, what is the role going to be? Christian Kirk was a great player who's established in this offense. Hakeem Butler, a very good player, and despite the draft capital, could still end up being a great player in the NFL. So let's say both those guys are good players. Where does that put Andy Isabella? You're not going to have 3 wide receiver 1s. You're not going to have 3 wide receiver 2s. Somebody's got to be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in this offense with, the potential wide receiver 1 week. And it could be like we've seen with the St. Louis Rams if things open up. It's hard to tell. I mean, there was consistency in the pass game, but 1 week it was Cooks. 1 week it was Woods. 1 week it was Kupp. And some of the guys were twice in the same week because the way that offense, the creativity of it. But boy, it's going to be hard to project exactly what these guys' role is. But still, for that reason, I really do like Andy Isabella going forward. So,
I like it, bro.
Thank you. So, man, I think I'm spent on all my. Oh, I got one Game of Thrones joke for you, bro, that I'm gonna take us out on.
Let them have it, man.
Listen, man, before
they
I
want
drop
it, they need it.
This joke. Listen, man, I really appreciate everybody that's been tuning into these, downloading the podcast, checking us out on YouTube. Ryan and I have been working. We're currently looking for writers. Probably by the time this episode's over, we're gonna have selected some. The website's coming soon. It's sooner than it's been claimed in the past. We're really on it now.
It's a very serious pod, and we're very serious about that.
Yeah, very serious. So, so there'll be rankings on there. It'll be free for the first year. So there's going to be a lot to like dynasty rankings, maybe some Devy work, positional rankings of all sorts for PPR, articles. You can expect the podcast to continue to get released. Videos to get released. So, help us share this, get this out there, man. We enjoy doing this, and we're going to continue to try to grow this product over at breakoutfinder.com. So with that said, let me hit you with this joke, bro. What is Hodor's favorite cereal?
I do not know, buddy.
Raisin Bran. Sorry, dude, dad joke. All right, well, that's all the time we've got for this week, folks. I'm sorry for wearing the glasses and the douchebag hairdo. I don't know why I did this. I immediately regret it.
Well done, buddy. Well done,
Ryan, for bringing the fire this week. And in case we don't see you, we'll be back next week. And try not to get your wiener ripped off like Theon Greyjoy. We're out of here.